On this episode of Survive and Thrive 8791 from the Buck and Honey's remote studios, I am joined by Paul Schneider. Paul's story is one of recovery, focused on sobriety, service, and faith. After a divorce, alcohol became his escape until he found the strength to embrace recovery and sobriety. Join us as Paul shares his inspiring story of overcoming challenges, rebuilding a meaningful, sober life. You won't want to miss this episode of Survive and Thrive 8791. Here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. What is up? Wherever you are or whatever you are doing, I hope you're having a great day. Welcome to another episode of Survive and Thrive 8791. I'm your host, Coach Decora. We are in the Buck and Honey's remote studios on the east side of our great capital city, Madison, Wisconsin. You can follow the podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, iHeartRadio, and YouTube at Survive and Thrive 8791. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter, the big X, at tdecora 8791. As well as hitting me up on Facebook at Tim Decora. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button wherever you listen to the show. Leave me a comment if you liked what you heard. If there's a topic or you know someone who would like to tell their story, email me at tdecora@gmail.com. Glad you could join us today wherever you happen to be. Our mission is to share stories and conversations that make you cry, laugh, and think, stimulating emotions, creating laughter, and inspiring the mind. A new episode will be released on Monday and Thursday morning, featuring a wide range of guests. The podcast will touch on many subjects, such as grief, loss of a loved one, recovery, professional setback, divorce, success despite challenges, etc. Our guests will share how they learn to survive and thrive. So I'm going to go through a little episode and guest intro according to the internet. And Paul, the internet is always right.
That's correct.
That's correct. Alcohol use disorder, AUD. In 2023, 10.2% of Americans aged 12 and older had alcohol use disorder, or about 28.9 million people. This includes about 12.1% of males and 8.3% of females. Today, I welcome Paul Schneider to the Buck and Honey's remote studios. Raised in the small southwest Wisconsin town of Platteville, Wisconsin, one of my favorite towns. Paul Schneider grew up one of 6 kids in a very solid middle-class family. He stayed in his hometown for college and attended the University of Wisconsin-Platteville, one of my favorite all-time colleges, where he earned an industrial technology degree that led to a very solid career working in new product development with consumer product companies. After college, he would marry and be blessed with 3 amazing children, who I know. Along with being a proud husband and father, casual drinking would turn into potential issues within his marriage. Paul tried recovery programs and rehab, but it wasn't until divorce, retirement, and a full-time focus on sobriety that have allowed him to enjoy recovery. With dry January a part of some people's lives, after hearing Paul's story, you may want to have what he has today, and you're going to share what that's like. Paul Schneider, welcome to the show. What is up?
Thank you, Tim. Glad to be here. I'm really pleased to be able to share my story and hopefully help other people.
Yeah. I'm excited too. So we talked off air that the reason I have some Milwaukee Brewer stuff on today is we are a day and a half out from losing one of the best announcers of all time, Bob Uecker. And we talked and shared. So my favorite quote from Bob Uecker is from the movie Major League. And yours is from his just regular
broadcasting at the games.
Broadcasting at the game. So I'm going to give my version first, and then I'll go. My favorite is when he's on Major League and he's Harry Doyle up in the broadcast booth, and Ricky Vaughn comes in to pitch. I think it's his first time from the penal leagues, California penal leagues, prison, and he comes in and throws like 4, 8, and 12 straight balls, walks the team, fills the bases, and he says, just a bit outside. I love that quote. Yours is from the regular broadcast. Can you put your best Bob Uecker voice on?
give it a go, but I always liked when somebody got a good hit, you could hear the crack of the bat and hear him say, get up, get up, get out of here. Home run.
Gone.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yes. So it's amazing how our little small market team in Milwaukee, the Brewers, the amount of attention that Bob Uecker's passing has had on the whole country. I was watching CBS News this morning, and they did a little tribute. I don't know if it was this morning or yesterday, but they did a little tribute to him, and it was probably the good 3 or 4 minute tribute of all the things. I think you got to start on Johnny Carson as a guest, and he was showing. It was kind of funny. He was showing some of the rings, and yeah, this is one of the championship rings, and then this is another American League championship ring, and yeah, I stole those versus earning them as guys. How were the holidays?
very good. Very good holidays. Another one of those things that I enjoyed tremendously more being sober, and enjoyed time with kids, siblings,
Grandkids as well.
grandkids. Yeah, that's super fun.
Was Santa Claus and Grandpa good to the grandkids?
Yeah, yeah.
Does the word spoiled roll in there a little bit?
I get coached by my daughters not to go overboard with, the presents, be practical. So got stuff like bike helmets and things like that that are usable.
I was thinking, as you said, I got some things and they didn't go overboard. So I thought you were going to say like starting blocks because all your kids were pretty good track athletes. I was thinking you might get some starting blocks for those kids.
Well, they're a little young yet, but it's in the back of my mind that to introduce them to it.
Let's
least.
plant that. It's not too early to plant the seed.
Yeah.
Because you have such a strong program in recovery, and I've seen that up close and from afar, I want to get to that right away. But before we do that, I have to talk about our sponsor. So our sponsor is Buck and Honey's Restaurant. It's a place that people can escape to from any problems that they have with their great food and drink menu, 5-star customer service, and a welcoming and vibrant atmosphere. People keep coming back with 4 locations in Sun Prairie, Monona, Wanakee, and Mount Horeb. Most communities in the Dane County area can get to a Buck and Honey's within 10 to 15 minutes. Big question. Drum roll. Have you been to Buck and Honey's?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Definitely.
And your favorite and your go-to meal is?
I really like to go for the Friday fish fries. Those are my favorite.
That's spoken like a
Wisconsin guy. Yeah.
Wisconsin guy. Yes. I'm a pizza guy. And again, we talked off air. I've been having the Bomber special. So I would encourage you, if you ever decide to take a left at the fork in the road one Friday night and you want to, hey, I'm going to try that pizza because Coach Tim Decora said to do that. Bomber special. I've had that pizza since the mid 80s because Tom Anderson, the owner, his dad ran a restaurant in Wisconsin Dells, my hometown. Pizza next time, maybe.
Okay. I'll give it a go.
Give it a go. All right, we're going to jump right into segment 1. And as I've shared with our listeners in the past, when people are in recovery, whatever that happens to be for, and they tell their stories, there's 3 segments or there's 3 parts to that. What was it like before? And then what happened? And then what is it like now? So in segment 1, we're going to talk about what it was like before when Paul grew up, what started to happen, and we'll touch on that a little bit, and then we'll break. And then second segment, we're going to talk about what happened. And really the best part of this whole thing and why I have you on is because of your program, strong program of sobriety. And I want anybody that is listening for this purpose, I want to get sober, or I hope my spouse, neighbor, cousin can get sober, they can refer back to this segment or this episode of Survive and Thrive 8791. You grew up in a small town USA, middle-class family, strong faith, Platteville, Wisconsin. Tell us about that. What was it like?
Well, I grew up one of 6 children in a Catholic family. We went to parochial school, 1st through 8th grade. And it was, a very simple and solid childhood. You know, the type of little town where you could ride your bike anywhere and was safe. So
Yeah, I wish we could go back to those
Yeah.
days sometime where you could see nothing but kids outside. Now that's a little bit of a rarity. Back up for a second. Parochial school.
yeah,
What was that Catholic school?
yeah, that was a Catholic school, St. Mary's
St.
in Platteville.
Mary's. Myself and my roommate would leave practice at about noon on a Saturday, and we'd say, "Hey, coach, we got to take off. We got to go and work out the kids." So Patty Christ, did you know her at all?
Well, not personally.
Not personally, but
yeah.
she used to be the principal, and she hired myself and a teammate of mine to come over there and work with I think it was third and fourth graders for the first hour, and fifth and sixth graders the second hour. Quite familiar with that place. Being one of 6 kids, you were number 4,
Yep, I was number 4.
kind of smack
And-
dab in the middle.
Yep, and it was 3 boys, 3 girls. So
And get along still with all of your siblings?
yeah, you know, we really do. We're really close. We stay in contact and are very supportive of each other. It's truly a blessing.
Anybody still back in Platteville?
Yeah, 2 in Platteville yet. Renee and Barb, sisters, are in Platteville.
And everybody else is kind of scattered about Wisconsin? Or
Yeah, primarily Wisconsin. My oldest brother is in Ann Arbor, Michigan. His career, he worked for Ford Motor Company for his career. So
it's a good company, good
Yeah.
reputable company,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
He didn't turn into a Wolverines fan, did he?
No,
No.
no, he didn't.
Or a Lions fan?
No, nope. We still share about the Packer games. So,
Yes. So you managed to go to college after high school, stayed in your hometown. Did you want to go elsewhere?
My father had a rule because there were 6 of us. He always said, you can go to college if you want, but you got to go to Platteville because, you know, it was a very cost effective, and fortunately it was a very good school. So it worked out.
Yeah, paying for school, one of 6 kids might get a little tough. Was there ever that conversation of, well, yeah, you can go to Stevens Point or La Crosse, but yeah, you're probably going to have to pay for that one,
Yeah.
Paul.
You know, and then it would include housing and things like that. And, you know, actually stayed at home first couple years of college, and then, you know, I roomed with a friend, high school friend, and, you know, rent was way up there, like $75 a month. So.
And you're going to tell us, I know this is going to probably date some people. You're going to tell us right now what was a pretty steep price for a semester of school, wasn't it?
I think it was a little bit over $600.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So
I wonder if somebody's back listening right now, go ahead and punch into your phone. What is $600 like now? How does that translate?
yeah, and I've put 3 kids through college,
So you know a little
now
bit.
I know what it is nowadays. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, you went to college in Platteville. Let's start kind of dabbling into the alcohol use. So when did you start to experiment with alcohol? Was it in high school, college?
First started in high school, and I hung around with a group of athletes, and so we'd stay clean during the seasons. But then when we were out of season or summer, we would dabble with it a little bit. We'd drive around the back roads and drink beers and things to kind of get primed up to go to maybe a dance or
Whatever was going on.
yeah,
Or
yeah.
or maybe another basketball
like I
game.
didn't play football, so but that was in season. So
Yeah.
I was a cross country runner. So,
Oh, yeah. So it doesn't sound like it was ever concerning at that particular point.
No, not bad. I mean, I think back how crazy it is to drink and drive, and we would do it then, and and
Times were different back then where adults could get away with that, or the officer would pull them over, and usually in a small
Yeah.
town, they would probably know who it is, and they might say, "Hey, Paul, we'll pull the car over. We're gonna give you a
Take
ride
you
home.
home."
We're gonna take you home," and it was a little bit better time back then. After college, you married and had three amazing kids, all college graduates. And I was fortunate enough to be around those kids when I was teaching, and they were coming through. I don't know if I had all of them, but all just really good kids. And me being a person who teacher and coach, I was always keeping a track of the box scores and the meet events in the paper, which is again long time ago. That doesn't really exist anymore. But I would always be checking how they were doing and hurdling and long jumping, and it was good to see. So tell us about your three kids.
Okay, I have 2 daughters and a son. The oldest is a daughter. She went to Minnesota, so she's a gopher.
Golden gopher.
Yeah, and has got a good job. She's married. She has two young kids now. And then my son was in the middle. He's a graduate of MSOE, Milwaukee School of Engineering, and he works for Milwaukee Tools, got a nice job there, does product development. And then my youngest, Emma, she went to UW Milwaukee, and she's a nurse. So I'm very proud of the 3 kids and the efforts that they've put in to their education and the careers that they're developing.
So you get a deal on Milwaukee Tools at all, or?
Yeah, I get to, that's a part of product development. You get to test
drive some wrenches or some screwdrivers. And then if you get that scratchy throat, you can call up, hey, Emma, I've got a scratchy throat right now. What do you think's going on?
That's right. Answer questions for you, and it doesn't cost as much.
No. So you tried to set up as the kids were going, and you wanted to give them a solid foundation because they all, like you said, excelled in school, and then they went on to graduate from college. You tried to give them a lot of different experiences. Talk about that in raising kids.
Yeah, I would always try to introduce them to sports. We did a lot of family vacations to make sure that they knew about the United States, Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, Gulf Shores, Mexico. I mean, just try to enjoy events like that with them, and then we were really serious about school always, and we were also a family that always had an evening meal together. We kind of carried that tradition through our family as well.
And a lot of discussions can happen about life discussions that's a lost art, I think, with a lot of people now.
What was the best part of your day? And, or what was the worst part of your day?
How was that Fayed teacher, Mr. Decora? Yeah. You also had a solid job and a good income where you could support the family, provide comfortable home and opportunities for the family. However, as time had started to go on, your alcohol use went from drinking a couple, 2 to 3 beers each evening after work to drinking when the kids went to bed.
Yeah.
Did that concern you at all in the beginning, or?
No. I wasn't aware of the progressiveness of the disease, and at that point, and so I would. I'd have a couple beers after work, and then, like I say, we'd go through the routine of having the evening with the kids and whatever it might be, sports or homework, and once they were in bed, be able to plunk down and maybe have a couple more beers. Then on the weekends too, I mean, any event we participated in, it was pretty normal that the parents would be drinking alcohol. So kind of fit right into that groove.
Kind of accepted that it's still kind of like that as well.
Normal, yeah.
And there wasn't any one situation that maybe you can look back now after having some long-term sobriety like you have, was there signs that you can look to now that maybe?
Yeah. For example, maybe first starting to get to the point where I didn't want my wife to maybe realize how many beers I was having on a Saturday, and would have one open in the kitchen, but then also one open in the garage, and maybe one open in the workshop. And so there were there was that progression that I sensed.
And knowing what you know now from hearing other people talk about their sobriety and what they used to be like, you're hearing some of the same things that you were doing. I was just,
Yeah.
I'm listening to a audiobook right now about a gal who has gotten sober in her 60s. And she talked about the hiding and trying to
Yeah.
keep it from her husband, and her choice of drink was wine, and she would be hiding bottles all over the place, and she didn't want to let her husband know how much she was drinking, so she would take a lot of the empties with her to go to the grocery store and toss them in the trash, so it didn't look like she was drinking a lot. In segment 2, you have enjoyed life of sobriety, but it didn't come easy.
No,
and
it
and
didn't.
it's work, and you're going to share what happened and what would lead to sober living. And really the meat and potatoes of the episode is you talking about what you're doing now, and to share that part of your story with anybody who wants to take their dry January and go into February and March and maybe decide that, hey, I want what Paul Schneider has because of how he has talked about it. And you're going to share that story. So Buck and Honeys has been with the Survive and Thrive 8791 since episode 1, with 4 locations in the Madison area. One is always near. Some people ask why Buck and Honeys. Well, they have a great menu, 5-star customer service, and there's nothing like having a place to escape to. In segment 2, you are going to talk us through what led to sobriety and what life was and is like for Paul Schneider. Please stay tuned. Don't change that dial, because you don't want to miss segment 2 of Survive and Thrive 8791. We will be back.
If you, a loved one, or someone you know is experiencing a physical, mental, or emotional crisis, there is help and resources out there. Contact NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness Helpline, at 1-800-950-6264. This is a free service providing information, resource referrals, and support to people living with a mental illness, their family, providers, and the public. United Way 211 is available 24/7, 365, and offers free confidential assistance. They connect people with the local programs and services that can help. Dial 211. Emergency Crisis Services, dial 911. The Suicide Prevention Lifeline, dial 988. To connect via web, chat, visit suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Along with those numbers, there is help. You just need to say 3 words. I need help. Now, back to the show.
All right, we are back. Welcome back to segment 2 of Survive and Thrive 8791. I'm your host, Coach Tim Decora. The podcast is where we feature guests who share their story in hopes of helping others who may be struggling with life, what life throws at them. At the 30-year mark of your marriage, things started to change for you and your wife, the Schneiders. Your focus probably up to that point became work, provide for the family, children. They're in all kinds of activities, sports, and church, like that. Marriage, however, was not a focus. And you started to maybe drift apart somewhere along the line. What did you and your ex-wife try to do to keep things together at that particular point?
Yeah, we had focused so much on the rest, or on our kids, my work, our involvement with the church, that our relationship seemed to be slipping away. And we would talk about it. We did try counseling on a number of occasions, and it just didn't seem to break down that barrier. And and then, so I did address, alcohol at that point. I went to AA meetings recommended by my wife, and she tried Al-Anon, and I stayed sober for 4 months there at a point, but we just
Couldn't get that spark back.
the intimacy was not there anymore. And so then more and more as the kids, grew up and were away, we began to just have separate, focus, and things that we would do.
Yeah, I don't think you're the only one that's had that happen, especially with kids, and you kind of did your job and then they're off to college, and there's people that go the route of falling back in love with their spouse. And there's also some people that have it in the back of their mind that, hey, we just want to get to the last one, get them out of the house, and then we're going to go our separate ways, and then everything in between.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you notice then at some point, coming back to the drinking, did that casual drinking start to escalate, and were there signs, knowing what you know now that you're being in recovery, when did you think that started, and then were there signs that you didn't see back then but you see now?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that casual drinking that I would do after work, became worse, and became, every night. And then, I would sit and maybe be watching sports on TV and drinking, and then my wife would maybe be reading a book or doing something, and when we wouldn't go to bed at the same time, we just had separate interests, and so I don't know, with it being uncomfortable, I think I began to try to cover up things and numb things, my feelings.
A lot of people do that. They numb. I've heard the quote of they not only numb the feelings, but then also numb all of the good stuff. And maybe that made, in hindsight, that made it tough. Eventually, then you and your wife go from the separation to then you get divorced. And when did you think you needed to get some help for your alcohol usage? Somewhere after the divorce then?
Yeah, after the divorce, obviously we were apart, and so we each I bought a home and lived by myself. No longer had that supervision of someone watching, or maybe thinking about how much
Accountability.
I was drinking. Yeah,
I was thinking of accountability there.
And so I began to drink more, and that went on for probably a couple of years, and then COVID hit, and I kind of the responsibility of having to get up and go to work every morning went away temporarily, and I was working from home, and it is amazing to me, but I began to drink then, starting at noon, and then I would begin, drinking when I got up in the morning to start the day, and it progressed to where I had to do that. I would physically, my body demanded it. And if I didn't, I would have severe withdrawal symptoms. I got in a trap. And so I went to the hospital on a couple occasions. I went to detox, on a couple of occasions. And then there finally came the week where I drank and, didn't realize it was Monday morning and didn't even call into work. So uncharacteristic of me and where I'd been through my career. My kids come like, where's Dad? We haven't heard from Dad in a while. And then, so that time, that's where I feel like that was my bottom. And I went to rehab. I did a 30-day rehab out in California, and then came back to Madison and did on top of that, a 30-day IOP program, intensive outpatient program. Since that point, that's where I've been committed, and I now, I realize that I'm powerless, over the disease, and so that's what happened.
You've tell a great kind of riveting story, and I didn't have an opportunity to think about questions because you're the details that you're providing me and the listeners. I was almost like with you, walking through that whole thing with you, and I'm just listening, and I could kind of almost feel, how you kind of felt during that time. You've had a year of sobriety, and then you had a little slip in there, and then in the last 17 months, you had that long-term sobriety. And some people that are listening now, for this particular purpose, they want to get sober. They're thinking, that guy's got 17 months of sobriety. I can't even stay sober for a week.
Yeah.
And you're putting it all together after doing rehab, a couple of trips to the hospital, your kids coming and wondering, is Dad okay? The reason we are here, the reason that you're here today is the next 5 things you're going to share. You're going to give a family, a spouse, a friend, a coworker, a neighbor, something that they can share with a loved one, or somebody themselves are contemplating, I've gotten sober, I'm sober, dry January. I want to keep this going like Paul has done. They're going to be able to share this with a loved one who might be struggling with substance abuse, or they can take this to any one of those people, spouse, friend, coworker, neighbor. So I asked you to send me 5 things that have helped you stay sober. And these are 5 suggestions that you're going to share with us today and the listeners, how someone can thrive in their sobriety. Here they go. We're going to start with number 1. I'm going to lob these in like softballs to you.
Okay.
Here's what you shared with me. The first one is surrendering. Finally realizing, and you've already alluded to this, finally realizing that I am powerless over alcohol and it is destroying my life. I cannot, and these are your words, I cannot drink like normal Wisconsin people. And you've already talked a little bit about that. Surrender. Hit that.
Yeah. I had to hit that bottom, and it's scary stories, but I was to the point where my objective in the day was, am I going to have enough vodka to get me through the day? How am I going to get, my next bottle? And then, just the ugly facts that I began to drink vodka right out of the bottle. I mean, it's not like drinking and enjoying beer anymore. It's fueling this need.
I've heard people say need. I've heard people say this monster or this alter ego that I have.
Yeah, and the sickness associated, if I didn't do it, was horrendous as well. So it was a no-win situation.
You talked about the withdrawals that you would be going through, and I imagine that wasn't much fun.
And I was by myself. Pretty scary.
And a lot of time to unfortunately reflect and not share with anybody.
Not happy about being by myself.
Well, so that kind of leads then to number 2, where you can't do this by yourself. So you have a support network and you utilize a recovery group as your main social network. Your retired lifestyle includes going to recovery meetings 5 to 7 days
Yes.
each week and being involved and supportive to the program and others, kind of like you're doing on the podcast today. You're helping others by the things you're sharing. Talk about your support network.
Yeah, well, going through the IOP, I got a lot of training or education about the disease and recommendations to get involved with AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. That's really the network that I utilize the most. It's true, I go to a meeting most every day, sometimes twice. I would have never thought I would do that, but I actually enjoy it very much. It's a social network. I have friends in there. We count on each other for calls, silly texts, between each other during the day.
Sounds like there's some accountability there too.
Very much. Yeah, very much. I guess I'm a fortunate alcoholic. I don't have any DUIs. And so I often become the designated driver in a different sense nowadays. But, to go to meetings and such. So,
Giving back to the program in a kind of a unique way. So number 3, address your underlying issues.
Yeah.
It sounds like, I'll read this here. The trauma of your divorce and all the loss associated with that drove you to your habit of picking up and drinking. And you said, I have had to accept, let go, and make amends and put yourself first in order to heal the wounds that remain after you no longer drink or use drugs. I really like that because I've heard that when there's a substance use disorder, and in this case it's alcohol, there's usually something lying underneath that.
Yeah.
Tell us about how you figured that out.
Yeah. One of the things I learned early in AA is once you get sober, all of those problems that you had and you were trying to cover are still there. And now you have to work through them and resolve them, in a sober way. I got a better understanding of, what I was doing and to myself.
I think you mentioned amends in there.
Yeah, most definitely. The 12-step program of AA made me think through, my life and the things that I was responsible for causing, the grief I was feeling, and realizing that I was suffering from self-pity, and rather than taking ownership and resolve the issues in a sober manner.
Number 4, play the tape through, and I use this one in just about every situation. And for me, it's the old coach. And if we go for it on third and 8, if I play the tape through and we don't, I got to start playing it through and what could happen. I think through, you said you think through what will happen if I drink again.
Right.
And you know how that tape's going to go.
Yeah. I know now that I can no longer drink alcohol, that if I do, I will be like that morning when I was pulled off the couch by my children showing up at my house and being, sent off to rehab, or the times I was in detox and how uncomfortable that was, that I am not going to be able to casually have a drink or two. I know that once I got started, I would scenario again.
The old one was too many and 10 is not enough. I've heard
Yeah.
people in recovery say that, and playing that tape through. I've not yet run into anybody in sobriety that said I had a great time at detox.
Oh, man.
If there's anything to, laugh a little bit about some of these things, yeah, there's not somebody that said, yeah, the food was great at detox and it was awesome. Last one, part of that whole kind of play the tape through, is you said my disease has progressed to the point that I don't feel that I could survive if I drank any alcohol again.
Right. I think that it would result in my death if I began to drink again. I wouldn't be able to control it, and then it would just begin to kill my body.
And it unfortunately gets to a point in your life where you have some experience with that, and you don't want to go through that laundry list that you talked about, the kids showing up and having to go to the hospital and forgetting what day it is. You are here today to say these are the 5 things that helped you get sober. And the listeners have heard some of the things you said today, that you checked some boxes of when Paul was sharing. If you checked some of those boxes, you might want to take a look at what Paul is doing right now to stay sober and to keep sober. But it's something that you have to do, and you said it 5 to 7 times each week. I applaud. I really applaud that. What an episode. Your story is so inspiring. It was a little bit gut-wrenching to listen to, but it is what people need to hear. And if they haven't gone through some of those things and they're going to continue to drink like they do, where it's every day and it's hiding bottles here and there, right, eventually it's going to get to that point. Getting rid of old habits that have lasted for years is hard, but you're here to tell us that it is hard, but it's worthwhile. Your story will help countless people who are looking for a way out of addiction or needing the coping skills necessary to get sober or clean. Your strength to share publicly with the Survive and Thrive 8791 crew is an inspiration. And now you're going to continue to help others. Our call to action. Paul Schneider just shared an experience that our listeners can learn from. These 5 things can help you or someone you know survive and thrive just like Paul did through an illness that nearly took everything away from him. Those 5 things were to surrender, number 1. 2, get a support network holding you accountable. 3, address any underlying issues, trauma, grief, mental illness, depression, anxiety. Address your underlying issues. Make amends. Number 4, you said play the tape through. So if I drink, here's what's going to happen. And how do you know? Because you've had those experiences.
Repeatedly, yes.
And you've done them repeatedly, and it's going to happen again. And then number 5, my disease has progressed to the point where I don't feel that I could survive if I drank any alcohol again. Final thoughts as we close another great episode of Survive and Thrive 8791. Are there any final thoughts, Paul?
Yeah, I guess one of the most powerful pieces of my recovery was the moment when I realized I was powerless over alcohol. And I succumbed to that fact that I could not control my use of alcohol, and it was destroying my life. And I would die. I was going to die if I continued in that route. And life has become so much better. So relationships are better. I'm just really enjoying the sober life.
And you can as well, to our listeners that are listening for that reason, I need someone to tell me that I can get sober and I can do it. And you heard Paul's story today of where he was, what happened, and what it's like now. And there are a lot of our listeners that are going to take this message and get themselves sober and do some of the things you did, or they're going to take the message to a loved one, a neighbor, a coworker, and just say, you need to listen to this guy because his story is very powerful. So Paul, thank you for sharing your story today. I'm so glad that we've crossed paths and have shared some of the same journey together. And because of that, that's the reason I wanted you to come on and share your story. And then you at the same time you also wanted to share that as well. On our next episode, we'll have another amazing guest who will share how they survived and thrived. If you have a story to share or you know someone who does, please reach out to me at tdecora@gmail.com. Until next time, hang in there with whatever you happen to be going through, and with hard work, dedication, and determination, you can survive and thrive. Until next time, take care.
Yep. Wish you the best.